So the four men went back to the Blue City Golf and started attacking Hannah and Cheslin immediately using a screwdriver and a flick knife, and they robbed them of everything that they had on them. Shortly after the robbery, one of the men, Nashville Julius, leaves the scene and continues on to wherever they were going before they saw the car. However, the other three were not done yet. The three remaining men shove Hannah between the two seats in front, and they shoved Cheslin into the back seats, and one of the men started to drive. And this was what was later dubbed as the ride from hell. That started at exactly 3:40 a.m. on Saturday morning on the 27th of May 2017. The next time we would see the car would be at 4:30 a.m. and this is also the last time that visuals of Anna of her life would be seen. This is exactly an hour after the attack. The car is captured by CCTV footage at a petrol station just outside of Stellenbosch that is called Devon's Place. At this point, Cheslin has been shoved into the boot of the car and Hannah can be seen sitting in the front passenger seat. And this would be the last time, like I already said, that visuals of Hannah would be seen of her alive. The man, Venon Witboy, exits the car and goes into the shop. Now take notice of the pants he's wearing because they will change later on. Witboy attempts to withdraw money from Cheslin Marsh's bank account. He is unsuccessful because actually Cheslin has given him the incorrect PIN code. He is extremely angry about this and goes back into the car, and he knows that Cheslin will pay for this later on. They continue driving and head to an area along Botteray Road, and unfortunately we lose them again for another hour somewhere in Kraaifontein. In a later confession by the men, they stated that Hannah was quietly complying with all of their demands and she would just look in front of her. The men kept promising her that no, everything will be fine and they're just borrowing her car. They just want to go home with it and they will return it back to her later. And this was just all lies. Their next stop was in Kraaifontein, and Cheslin later testified that it was still very dark when they stopped in Kraaifontein and they opened the boot for him and they told him to get out. And Cheslin says he remembers Hannah saying in a very scared voice, asking, "What is going to happen now? What are you planning to do?" Man didn't answer and just forced Cheslin out of the boot, and this was the time he was going to pay for not giving them the correct PIN code. Men ordered Cheslin to lay on the ground and placed his head on a brick. Cheslin later said the last thing he remembers is two men holding bricks in their hands, and he closed his eyes and he prayed, but he lost consciousness very soon after. Men then got back into the car and drove off with Hannah, hoping that Cheslin would bleed to death. They drove to a secluded paintball area just outside of Botteray Road. Now, the time now is around 6 a.m. The police say that on this location, Hannah was unfortunately raped repeatedly by these men. The police later said they spent around an hour at this area, which is completely atrocious. They then got back into the car with Hannah and they drove off once more. This time they were driving towards a small farm right next to a stream, and this is unfortunately where Hannah would lose her life. She was stabbed in the neck and a large rock was dropped on her head, and she immediately succumbed to her injuries and she passed. You would think this would be the end and this is where the men would stop, but in fact they didn't. They continued on with their crime spree. They moved to Kraaifontein where they robbed a woman who was walking to work. Now you must remember now, it's around 8 a.m. in the morning. And this woman was walking to work and they robbed her of a cell phone as well as her handbag. And after completing this particular crime, they took a break from 8:15 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the afternoon. There is no evidence of the men anywhere. It is believed that they must have went somewhere to sleep. We spot them again at 1 p.m. in the afternoon in Case River, where they are robbing and kidnapping another woman, and on the street, the men are still driving Hannah's City Golf. CCTV footage shows the car arrive at the Shell petrol station at 1:12 p.m. in the afternoon, and Venon Witboy is now seen wearing a different colored pants, meaning that he must have changed somewhere between 8 and 1. He heads to an ATM once more, and this time he's trying to draw money from the woman that they have kidnapped who's in the car. The second guy also joins Vidboy in the ATM, and they draw 3,000 rands from the woman's account. And fortunately, they decide to drop her off at Botare Road soon after. A short while later, they drop off one of the three men at his home, Vennen van Niekerk, and he is given his share of the money, which is 1,000 rands. At this point, only two men were left, which was Geraldo and Vidboy. The two men then decide that they want to go sell the car in the township, and they would be going to Delft. Now, their route that they wanted to take to Delft was going to go through Stellenbosch. However, at this point, the car has been reported missing and the police are actively looking for it. The vehicle is immediately spotted by an undercover police car driven by Detective Constable Bulelani Siko, who follows the car. A few moments later, he calls for backup and a police vehicle also follows the car and switches on the blue lights. Now, the Blue City Golf, spotting everything that is happening, speeds away and a high-speed car chase begins along this route. Now, CCTV footage captures the men pulling into Dwars in die Weg farm as they attempt to escape. Detective Sipho decides to stop the car and chase them down on foot, and a farm gate and a security guard stand in the way of the car when they're inside the farm. Then decide to stop the car and attempt to run off on foot as well, and they are shortly arrested, bringing their whole crime spree to an end. Two men confessed, and everyone, including the two other men who had already been dropped off, were arrested. Hannah Cornelius was laid to rest a few days later in a beautiful service, and the Stellenbosch community was literally at a standstill on the day as they celebrated her life, with bikers doing a ride in her honor. Cheslin Marsh, Hannah's friend, actually survived the attack as he regained consciousness a few hours later and sought for help. He was unfortunately left with one deaf ear, and Hannah Foundation, which was formed by her mother, later raised funds to get a hearing aid for him. And unfortunately, a few months later, Hannah's mother, Hannah Cornelius, was found dead in shallow waters at a beach that she had went swimming in the early hours of March of 2018. And the incident was ruled an accident as there were speculations of suicide.
My wife, in addition to being my best friend, was the strongest and most competent person I've ever met. She became a shadow of herself, inconsolable, frantic, almost manic in everything she did. Outwardly still in control, but inside she had very little to give. There was very little substance. She turned her back on a successful law practice and plowed every bit of energy she had into the foundation with absolutely no regard for her health or any other practical considerations. No one really knows what happened on that early morning when she decided to go swimming in an ice-cold and stormy Atlantic Ocean. For myself, I do not believe that she committed suicide or she ended herself. But what I do believe is that she did not have the physical or mental strength left to counter any difficulties that she may have experienced.
Hannah's father, Willem, would later say his family died the day Hannah died. And he said that his family was buried the day his wife died, but promised himself to leave for the sake of his autistic son.
My son Andries does not understand the concept of death. Every night when I put him to bed, he stops in front of a framed photograph of Hannah and asks, when her day is over, when is she coming home? Hannah moet na huis toe kom, haar vakansie is nou klaar. This has now been going on every night for a year and a half. For myself, I find it difficult to express exactly what I feel. I was medically boarded, well short of normal retirement age. I'm sure that had certain financial implications. I haven't yet gotten around to considering that. But even without a medical discharge, I would have resigned from something that I've done as a vocation for 35 years. My concern was that I had no doubt that I could not have maintained the impartiality that is called for by a judicial officer. And if I could not do that, then I had no right to be on the bench. The most obvious observation of the effect of what happened is the manner in which my life has contracted. There is no real joy or anticipation, no hope or expectations for the future, no goals to strive to. Just the obligation to give my son as much of a life as he can have for as long as he can. Still, I did not come here today to elicit sympathy, and I can't help feeling guilty about the publicity that this trial has gathered when the most vulnerable members of our society, the women, the children, the elderly, are seemingly assaulted, murdered and abused on a daily basis, and not an iota of the attention is paid to the majority of those cases. I do not know why. All that I know is that my daughter would have agreed that it is not fair. I'm well aware of the constraints placed on this court in imposing sentence, and I fervently hope that the court will consider imposing a sentence that will at the very least prevent other parents from going through what we have gone through as parents, as far as the accused in this matter is concerned. Thank you very much, Your Honour.
The men were all sentenced to life imprisonment. And on that very somber note, we have come to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share the video and subscribe, and check out the rest of the true crime playlist. We have done other similar videos. I'll also be posting more very soon. Thank you guys again for watching. Bye.